From the firehouse in beautiful downtown North Manchester, Indiana, it's Good Night with Christopher Blue. Now here's our host, Christopher Blue.
Hello and welcome to Good Night with Christopher Blue. I'm Christopher Blue and we have a wonderful show for you tonight. Tonight, we're finally getting rid of Reverb. We're getting rid of Captain Calm. We have a special guest to talk about the North Manchester, maybe? It is a Civic Band. I think it's from North Manchester. We'll find out together. Samantha Howard! Yeah. Have a seat. Welcome to the show, Samantha.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, you are the director of the Civic Band, correct?
Yes.
And is that North Manchester based? We've talked about the Civic Band once before on the show, but I forget where you guys are based.
So we are based in North Manchester, but since we're a volunteer organization, many of our members come from surrounding communities. We've got people from Warsaw, up around Columbia City, as far south as Walton and Flora. We've had people from Marion, so it's a little bit of everywhere, but it's basically the surrounding communities.
Yeah, awesome. Now, as I said, we talked about the Civic Band a little bit on the show before, and that was with the man who wrote the music for our show. I love Steven. He's an amazing man. Do you have any juicy stories for me about Steven and the band? Does he cause trouble in the band?
Steve is our lead clarinet. Mm-hmm. He has been with the band for many years. He does have a very dry sense of humor. And he likes to pick on the trumpets.
Oh, I believe that.
But the trumpets tend to like to pick on him because he's a tad bit short in stature.
Yeah.
So he gets a lot of short jokes. But it keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
And some people, when they're brand new with the band, they kind of think things are getting a little out of hand. But after they've been there for a while, they find out that that's part of the fun.
Right. We love you, Steve. No. You've been sitting in the audience for previous shows, and you've seen that this show is chaos. We're already off track, not even touching the submitted questions yet. And when I did go through these questions, I noticed you did not talk about how you actually know me personally outside of this show. When I was a child, you actually gave me my very first paycheck.
I did not give it to you. You earned it.
Oh, well, okay. Yes. You handed me my very first paycheck. Do you remember what it was I did to earn that paycheck?
You were friends with my son, Ian.
Yep.
And you were over at our house. And the very next day, I was supposed to be giving basically catering dinner for some folks that were visiting our sales team. And I had I believe it's a 40-quart roaster pan that needed to be made completely full of beef stew. Yeah. And you and Ian and I peeled potatoes, cut up onions and carrots for hours.
Yes.
Managed to clog the garbage disposal twice. But you hung in there.
Yeah.
And you had no idea that you were going to be doing that at all.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but I had no idea that I was going to be paid. Like, I was just doing it because, you asked for help, so I was helping, and then the next time I was over, you were like, well, here's your paycheck. Blew my mind, so. But I think that's a very charming story of my very first paycheck. And, but we're not here to talk about me, because I love talking about me, but that's not what we're here. We're here to talk about the Civic Band. So I'm finally going to get into these questions.
Okay.
So, which I think we slightly covered this, but who is the Manchester Civic Band?
So it is a community band based here in North Manchester with musicians coming in from the surrounding communities. We basically provide live music in and around North Manchester. We do 3 concerts a year at both the Peabody and the Timbercrest retirement communities. We've performed at the Second Fridays here in North Manchester. We've been in parades. Silver Lake used to have a parade. We were in it for years. And then various other groups, whether it be arts functions, churches, company picnics. We've just played wherever people have asked us, and if we can fit it into our schedule, we will pretty much do it.
Yeah. Now, going off script again, before you directed, before you started directing, were you a member of the band yourself?
I was. I started in the fall of 2008 by accident.
Oh.
I was at the high school helping the high school band do uniform fittings, and one of my coworkers walked in and said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I knew he lived in Rochester, so I looked at him and said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he told me about the Manchester Civic Band, and I decided, well, I hadn't played for years, probably closer to decades, but I thought I'd give it a shot. So I showed up the next week and was sitting there, and the director at that time was Reg Smith. He walked in and looked at me and he says, "Are you here for the band?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, what do you play?" And I said, "Well, what do you need?" And he looked at me and goes, "Okay, what instrument do you have with you?" I said, "Well, I brought my flute tonight." And he's like, "Okay, well, play that." And so I played that for a number of years.
Wow. And I guess now I need to know, because you made me curious. What do you play?
So I started in 5th grade at Triton High School, all the way up in fabulous Bourbon, Indiana. And at the time, there were only 15 people in our high school marching band. 5 of us played flutes.
Okay.
So over the summer, I thought I would surprise my band director with the fact that I'd learned to play my sister's trumpet.
Oh.
She was surprised and promptly changed me to playing what's called an E-flat alto. It looks like a baby baritone. It's only about that big. They don't make music for it anymore, so she taught me the wrong fingerings to be able to play that horn using French horn or F horn music. And from that, I just started switching instruments. I learned to play French horn, went back to playing trumpet for a little bit, ended up playing bass clef baritone, and then transferred into percussion. And so throughout high school, I played a lot of different instruments.
Wow.
And we jokingly say if it has a string or reeds, I don't play it.
Okay.
Everything else I've played probably at least once.
Wow.
Maybe not so good on some things.
So back to the band itself. When and where do you guys meet?
So we meet pretty much every Wednesday night at the Manchester High School Band Room, which is just inside door 2. We try to start at 7. Pretty much try to end around 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock, just depends on the night, who all's there, how much practice we've been able to have, if there's a particular piece of music that's just not coming together as well as we would like. But we're not real taskmasters, so if you can't get there until 7:15, fine. We've had farmers that haven't been able to come at all because they're putting in the hay and it's supposed to rain. We've had people show up literally the day before a concert.
Oh, wow.
And play. So It's a volunteer organization. You take what you can get,
Yep.
and you hope for the best.
It sounds like you have to do a lot of managing through the chaos, which I have to do a lot of the same on this show.
Well, every practice gets to be interesting because you don't know who or what instrument is going to come walking through the door, and so I try to bring a library of pieces that we're working on with me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to get a little inventive. Yeah. We have a bassoon player right now, and not all of our pieces have bassoon parts.
Now, what is a bassoon for those who don't know?
A bassoon is a very large double reed instrument. It's about that big around, but it's a long tube. And it can play bass clef music very similar to trombones, baritones, euphoniums. Oh. If it's played well, and our current player Diego is very good, it's got a really nice mellow tone to it. If they're really bad, it sounds like a duck getting stomped on. Oboes are kind of the same thing.
Okay. So why do you think that that there is a need for Civic Band? Like why do you feel that it's important to have Civic Band?
Well, I'll go back to the start of the Manchester Civic Band in 1972. Harold and Mary Louise Leckrone, who was the high school band director, and their daughter Pat Egoff put the band together 50 years ago at the centennial celebration of the Covered Bridge here in town. And it was just to add to the atmosphere of that community event. And I think I haven't been able to talk to too many of the people that originally were in that band. I do know a couple. They stuck with it because they like to play music and they like to play their instruments. And so over the years, we've tried to find different places within the community to do it, because it is important for the community to have that type of a live music brought, whether it's in parades or Second Fridays. With our retirement homes, it's a special event for them. But even more so for our musicians, it's really a chance to, I'll say, relieve stress. A lot of us find that it's fun, even if we have to practice because the piece is really hard. But it's camaraderie, it's being with people with like interests, and then that flows out into the community. And we're also showing especially younger people, junior high and high school students that are just starting their musical careers, that unlike some of your sports, the majority of people aren't going to become college athletes or pro athletes. But once you learn an instrument, it's pretty much something that you can play forever. Yeah.
I know a few people in the band, and I hear stories all the time. And so let's say I wanted to join. Can anyone join? What's the process like? What are the stipulations?
Really, the only stipulation that we have is that you have an interest.
Okay.
It helps if you play an instrument, but Mary Louise Leckrone didn't. She was married to the high school band director. She followed him, and she played the bass drum for the band for pretty much her entire rest of her life. The good thing was she could keep a beat. My husband cannot keep a beat. So he is a very good roadie. He carries the gear around. But if you have an interest in either picking up an instrument that you had played earlier, or you want to pick up something new, I've switched instruments half a dozen times. We've had different people switch instruments here and there. Steve Waldeck came on and he plays several instruments. Mm-hmm. So we have them available for people to try out and practice. But generally we find them in odd places to pick them up, pawn shops, garage sales, online, and we try to hook people up if they don't have their own instrument.
Now, what instruments would you say like you're good on in the band, and what instruments would you say like you need people to come in and play?
Well, what do we need? Everything. Really, it comes down to the fact that we do not have any percussionists. So snare, bass drum, any of the mallets, any of the percussion toys, sleigh bells, triangle, those kinds of things. Cowbell. Yeah. More cowbell.
Always more cowbell,
Always
yes.
more cowbell. Trombones, baritones, more saxophones. Another flute, please, because right now I'm kind of the only flute, and I play and conduct at the same time, which is very weird. Clarinets, of course, French horns. So pretty much anything. Right now I've got a pretty good core group that we can cover most of the parts, and most of the music that I'm choosing is made that way. Mm-hmm. But it would be better to have a fuller sound and to have those other voices that we are missing.
Yeah. So Civic Band, I'm sure you play a lot of shows. Right now we're towards the end of October. Thanksgiving, Christmas is coming up. When are your next performances?
So our Christmas performances, we will be here at the Firehouse on December 2nd for Manchester. I believe it's Manchester Live that does it. It's called Light Up the Tree, the tree lighting. And then we will be at the Peabody Chapel on December 7th. And then I believe it's called the Hub at Timbercrest on December 14th.
Wonderful. And do we have a sneak peek of what songs we might be hearing?
What songs you might be hearing? Well, it will be Christmas-based, of course. There'll be some contemporary favorites. Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Mm-hmm. We have one that is British. It is a huge hit in England. It's called Walking in the Air. And since you're on YouTube, other people should definitely check it out. It's kind of Frosty the Snowman-ish.
Okay.
It's a really interesting piece. We've got one that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek because it's called The Fairy Tale of New York. Really, the Christmas part of it is the fact that the singer is drunk. And ends up in the drunk tank in New York on Christmas. It's actually Welsh from the group The Pogues.
Oh, okay.
But we've got some other favorites like Here Comes Santa Claus and some other ones that are kind of mixes. I think there's one that's called Christmas Festival. I haven't finished the list yet, but
it's still
usually,
early.
It's stuff that most people will listen to. Other than those two British songs, they'll listen to it and go, oh, I know that song.
Wonderful. So how can someone get a hold of you if they are interested in joining the band, or how can people find you to see what's going on?
Well, we do have a website that's civicband.org. We're on Facebook under Manchester Civic Band. We have our own YouTube channel, which was a COVID thing, under North Manchester Civic Band. And if all else fails, come to door 2, Wednesday night, Manchester High School, 7 o'clock. I'm usually there around 6:30, but 7 o'clock is when we'll be really trying to get started.
Well, all those links will be in the description down below. Thank you so much for coming on and
you're welcome.
and talking about Civic Band. It's been fun. With that, that's our show. Thank you guys so much for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Don't forget to click that bell so you get notified whenever we upload new content. Until next time, good night, my sweet baby angels. I'll see you tomorrow.